Today we'll have Matt here, and I apologize, I have my little guy in the back. So Matt, you can take over. I'm going to turn him off.
Sure, no problem. This is Matt Hillis here in Sacramento, California. Costin is traveling this week, and we decided to repeat the Ask You Anything, Ask Me Anything, I apologize, Ask Me Anything webinar, where you have an opportunity to talk about things that are affecting you right now, and I can give you my honest opinion. I will not have answers for everything. I am by no means an expert in everything Montessori. I'm good at certain things, but I may not have the resource for you. However, one of the things that's great about these calls is it helps us to gauge the type of content that we want to create in the future. So if you come up with something that stumps me or I don't have a strong opinion on it, we're going to put that down on the list for discussion and training in the future, because we can definitely figure it out. So with that, I'd like to invite everybody who is on the call right now to use the chat feature on Easy Webinar to submit any questions that you have. I can also do a monologue for the next 45 minutes if you like, but I doubt that's going to be very entertaining. So with that, Danine, you back?
Yeah, I am back. And I actually, while we're waiting for people to chime in, I was thinking, could you chat a little bit about two things? One, like your major challenge in marketing, overall being ahead of school, and then your current challenge right now. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. So I think the major challenge for me overall is figuring out what a correct ad spend and budgeting is, because, so my goal is to always have a waiting list for our programs. And there are certain times of the year when I can anticipate that we're going to have more inquiries and more tours and more applications. But right now I'm starting to think about the 2019-2020 school year. And I start looking at the spreadsheets and I think, gosh, we have to fill 25 spaces or whatever, and I get a little bit nervous. And then my inclination is to say, well, we should just increase our ad spend, and I'm not necessarily sure that's the right way to go about it. So I waffle back and forth. I need to remind myself that these things tend to solve themselves over time. I have a year before we start the next school year, but I always like to be well prepared, and I don't want to be in a position where we're under enrolled ever. So that's probably my biggest challenge, is figuring out exactly what I want to spend, and nobody really wants to obviously spend more money than they need to. One of the things that's really good about online marketing is that you're able to track the effectiveness of your ad spend so much better than traditional print advertising. And if you're not using Google Analytics, if you're not set up with if you're using Google and if you're using Facebook, you should really be making sure that you are tracking your spend to the number of leads that you're getting. We can absolutely help you with that if you need assistance with that. I believe we have some resources in our training section online to help you get that set up. And then if you are a third or fourth plane client, we will actually do that for you. So that's the overarching problem that I'm having in general. This right now, I think I'm struggling with getting our automation set up. We're using a tool called Entreport, which is a combination CRM and automation email platform. Email marketing is a really effective tool to use because it's free, number one, and because email is still a very trusted connection for people online. But it takes a long time to set all of that up. And my challenge is finding the time to get everything in order, to do the writing for that. I have a lot of writing that's already been done, but putting things in the correct order and really determining the journey that parents go through. Sometimes I feel a little bit disconnected from what parents are experiencing or the questions that they're actually having, because I'm not the one in the tours with them. Yet I'm the one sitting here trying to figure out the automation and sending them the right messages at the right time. So that's what I'm struggling with right now. I'm looking forward to November and December. I always joke and say that's kind of that's my summer vacation time. Not really summer, but it's the time that I get the most. The school is closed for long stretches of time, and those are times when I can really hunker down and not be distracted with doing these longer term projects like automation and writing. So That would be the two things. Curious as to what other people are struggling with. I can't be the only one that deals with it.
Right. So in short, right, it's always we're always improving and we're always revamping what we're doing. And do you find it helpful to have a community of people that can help you with that, or do you feel like you're kind of the only one needing to do it?
Uh, I feel so. Listen, in my school, I'm really the only one that's going to be doing that from a kind of a master planning standpoint. I'm really, really lucky to work with great Montessorians who can work with parents and most especially can work with children. And I'm lucky to work with a couple of people in admissions who are really good at that aspect of it. So I really look at that as my job. Look, I'm not going to ask Sylvia, our admissions director, or Jamie, our registrar, to figure out automation. I want it to basically work for them. It's a system that basically just provides them a way of operating and provides them, leads that come in automatically, and it just works for them. It's my job to kind of figure that whole thing out. It can be a little bit daunting, but I think it's best, at least for me, if it works that way. Some schools may be larger than us. I mean, we're a relatively large school, but I know that there are some schools, especially schools that offer high school programs and middle school programs, that may have more resources and may have more people. So you may have a team doing that. But at least in our school, I'm the one that's doing it on my own.
Right. And we've got a couple questions from David. David asks, any tips, Matt, on building a teacher recruiting pipeline similar to our parent-children recruitment pipeline? And do you have a similar goal to always have a wait list?
David, that's a fantastic question. And I've been thinking a lot about that because here in California, unemployment is under 4%. And so we are noticing, like we opened up a new toddler program, a new classroom in September. And so, we had the guide ready to go and we trained her. She went to Denver and took the 8i training. But we were having a hard time finding assistants for her classroom. And, especially, I shouldn't even say this, for all of our assistants, not just at the toddler level, we need to find just really loving, quality human beings that are reliable and you can trust to be with the children in your care. That has proven to be actually a little bit difficult when unemployment gets really, really low. So I'm going to answer your question in two parts. Number one would be recruiting assistants, and number two would be recruiting guides. So for assistants, I look at this as this is just another opportunity for marketing. And I was thinking a lot about this. Our assistants are generally between the ages of 23 and 30, probably. A lot of them maybe just graduated from college or kind of thinking about what they want to do in their life. In California, you need to have a certain number of early childhood education credits. So I like to hire people who maybe just graduated with a degree in child development. And it's, they don't last forever, especially when you get to a school. We have 19 different classrooms. So we have, 80 employees. And a lot of those people are assistants. They won't be with you forever. And so you need to always be thinking about having a steady stream of people coming in that you can hire and train to be good assistants in a Montessori classroom. That's marketing, right? And so I've been thinking a lot about setting up a different pipeline for recruiting assistants. One of the ways that I think I'd really like to do this is actually focus on Instagram, because that demographic, that, a female generally between the ages of 23 and 30, that's going to be the primary social network that they use. And I would like to actually be able to use that in all of my recruitment ads so that they can start following us on Instagram and so they can start to see pictures and videos about things that are going on in our school and get inspired to come and apply. And from there, you need to treat that just like you would somebody that's inquired as a parent. So when they are opting in, for lack of a better word, for learning more about working at the school, you can set up a series of emails that go out to them that sell them on why they would want to come work for you. Some general selling points for working on our school would be it's going to be much different than working in a daycare center or ABC preschool. We are a philosophically based program with very, very well trained teachers, with beautiful environments, with an engaged community, with outcomes with our students that are amazing. All of those things could be a separate one-off email that we could then send to people on a weekly basis to get them to encourage to come in and either observe or come in and interview. And from that point, really, it's really about working the pipeline. So you have a certain number of people that apply. You have a certain number of people that you would then want to consider for a second interview. And then this year, I hired a person that's doing all of our adult education at the school. So she is doing, actually today, she's doing the first training session for onboarding all of our new staff, because I really wanted all of the staff to be able to hear consistently before they even start in the classroom. These are the things that we need you to know when you're in a Montessori environment. All the little things about Montessori, the kind of the well, I'm going to say that the little things we do in the classroom between teacher and guide, that needs to come from the guide, in my opinion. But I do want people to have at least a 1 hour overview of what Montessori is, the basic tenets of it. I really want them to know things about, what licensing requirements are. I really want them to know about general health and safety things, just so that when they come for the first time in the classroom, whether they're a substitute or an assistant or whatever, that they have some general knowledge about how we want them to behave around children. So that's number one in terms of assistance. Number two, in terms of guides, I have always I have always thought that the best way, and I'm not alone in this, to recruit guides is to really promote internally. I've taken risks before, and I've hired people from, somebody from Florida, and I fly them out to the school, and we interview them for a week, and they visit the classrooms, and then we make a decision about offering them a position. We're an AMI affiliated school, so we have to have somebody with that training. But you're always taking a risk because you never really know that person well enough before you're hiring them, and then this person moves out to your community, and I've had this experience before where they start in the classroom, and then within the first month they're like, oh gosh, I didn't realize this side of this person, or this person may be not a good fit culturally in our community. There's all sorts of things that have come up, and then you're kind of stuck. So I definitely prefer to promote from within, and I don't have this really fully developed yet, but I'd like to have a very, very clear path that I can give to somebody that's an assistant. And again, this is another selling point when you're hiring assistants. You can say, listen, we have a promotion path for guides. We sponsor people for training, and we really want them to come from our community. So really laying it out, listen, maybe you need to work for a minimum of 18 months at our school. You need to have 2 letters of recommendation from people that work in our school. You need to have attended a certain number of trainings. You need to have read these books. You need to have done whatever. That you make it very clear about if somebody wants to be considered for training, if we're going to invest $15,000 to send you to training, these are the requirements that you need to have, and we will make that decision based upon that. Up until this point, I think it's been a little bit catch as catch can for us, because I've needed to fill all these positions, and I'm like, well, we kind of like this person, and we'll send them to training. I'd like to have it a little bit more defined, and have a pipeline for guides in that same way. But I think the first step in this, David, is making sure you're very, very clear about what your internal requirements are for promoting assistants to training, because it's a huge expense. We spend a lot of money every year on training people, and the benefit of having somebody that is locally based is that there's really not a risk of them moving away. Their families here. Hopefully, they're going to buy a house here. That's what you really want. You want your guides to have a mortgage, right? You want your guides to have a mortgage for a house in your community, because it's going to be much more likely that it's going to be much harder for them to eventually leave. And it would be paradise on earth if we could just have, if I could have every guide work forever at our school, it would be amazing. But that's just not reality, unfortunately. So that is my long-winded answer about both of those things. It really does come down to marketing, and your marketing to assistants, or your marketing to potential guides, and having things pre-written helps so much, where you can actually just send things out on a schedule, and then they are getting one consistent message from you, and you don't have to to rush, or you don't have to schedule a meeting with them. You don't have to do all these things where you have to recreate the wheel every time. You're just giving them exactly what it is the assistants need to know, and exactly what it is that potential trainees need to know. So that is the answer for that.
Great. Thank you, Matt. That was good.
You're welcome.
We've got Melissa who's got a question. She is wondering how you explain your tuition to people. Do you tell them the whole amount or tell them a monthly amount? She's experiencing when people ask for tuition and she tells them the full amount. Most of them say thank you and goodbye. So she's wondering how you relay that information.
Another great question. So Melissa, about 4 years ago, we actually moved all of our early childhood programs to operate year round. So when the school was founded in 1975, it was just like elementary. Early childhood programs operated on a traditional school year. That was a yearly contract. It was a yearly charge that was broken up into, X number of payments. I don't think that's the best way to go, regardless of whether or not you are operating year round. I still think it's better to quote monthly, because if you're telling somebody that it's going to be $16,000 a year for their child to attend a preschool program, that number just jars people. Versus if you're telling somebody it's going to be $1,200 a month, they can start to put that into their budget. They're not going to be thinking about their budget in terms of annual money. They're going to be thinking about their monthly budget. They know what everything else in their life is monthly. Their mortgage, their car payment, their credit card bills, everything's on a monthly basis. I strongly advocate that you give them that you start with a monthly rate. Now, when you're doing your actual enrollment agreements, however you structure your school, if you do a school year and you don't allow withdrawals, I understand that. You need to put that in at that point. But that first initial conversation, that tuition request, that phone call where you're giving them the rates, I would absolutely do monthly quoting. I know that there are other people in the Montessori community that disagree with that, but for me, that's what I found has worked best to not, for lack of a better word, scare people off, because it is a huge investment. One thing I would not do is, I know that there, especially in California, a lot of the corporate preschools, they actually quote a weekly rate. And the reason they quote a weekly rate is because it can make it sound even less expensive, because people don't realize that there's actually 4.33 weeks average in a month. So, they'll say, oh, it's $200 a week. And people will kind of compute that in their mind to being $800 a month. And it's actually $866 a month. I would not do the weekly rate. I think the weekly sends completely the wrong message. Listen, we're not a place where you're going to drop off your child for the week and then maybe come this week and not that week. That's not what we're doing. I do think the monthly is the way to go, but I'm open to other people's opinions, and really finding what works for your community is best. Sounds like you've had the same experience as me. When you give them the annual rate, you get a lot of quick hangups. I get that, and I lived that as well. So I would do the monthly rate. One of the things that's important about tuition to do as well, and I do this, I don't handle the phone calls directly, but I do train my staff to do it, is I set an expectation that tuition is going to increase every year. I know we've all been in that situation where we're doing our budgets for the next year and we're setting our rates and we feel so guilty, like, oh, tuition's going to go up another 5%. I like to let people know at the beginning, when they're in the application process, that you should expect tuition to go up at 3 to 5% a year. And there's good reasons for that. Number one, we're trying to recruit and retain the best staff as possible. We have a generous benefits package for our staff. We want to have the same person with your child for 3 years. And if we're underpaying them, that's not going to be a reality. And eventually the children who are in our community are not going to have that consistent adult. That's really one of the biggest things that people see when they're coming to our school and complain about when it doesn't happen, right? I mean, I've had those situations before where, I've had a guide leave in a primary classroom, and I have a lot of parents that are really upset because they enrolled with the intention, with the expectation that they were going to have one teacher for their child for a 3-year period. And we make a big deal about that when they're going through the admissions process, that, there's a lot of consistency that happens here. Your child's going to develop this deep relationship with this guide. She's really going to know him or her very, very well at the end of this experience. And then, the guide leaves for whatever reason. So I like to use that as kind of a caveat when we're saying, we are going to do our best to make sure that we have this person with your child for 3 years. And one of the ways we do that is by paying them well, offering a good benefits package. And part of that is the fact that tuition is going to go up 3 to 5% a year. So setting that expectation in advance has been a smart thing for us to do, and I would encourage you to do that as well. It's actually kind of a selling point when you think about it.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So we don't have any more questions, Matt. Do you have any topics that are kind of in theme? Oh wait, Marnie's got one. Marketing Montessori versus the rest of the other options is one thing, but what if your competition is actually other AMI Montessori schools? How does one differentiate between quality Montessoris?
Sure, that's a great question. Montessori. So we are not marketing Montessori in totality, right? Montessori is a starting point. It's our philosophy. But there's going to be, that's not really the reason why people choose your school. After they've chosen an AMI Montessori program, after they've chosen an AMS Montessori program, whatever, after they've decided that Montessori is right for their child and those tenets are in place, then they're making the decisions about other sorts of things, what your community is like, what your school looks like physically, what your campus looks like, how nice the people are, how convenient, how you're making it easier for them to be a member of your community, the convenience factors. Those are the things that you really need to look at as differentiators in terms of what makes your school community unique. And every school has these things, and you just need to be able to push what it is. We cater to a lot of working parents. Sacramento is not, Sacramento is not Beverly Hills, and we don't have a lot of people that are just independently wealthy that are throwing money at our school to come. A lot of people are sacrificing to be here, and I would say 90% of our parents are both work. And so because of that, we've done some strategic things to make it easier for them. So we are easily commutable. We're located on commute paths, and I make a big deal about that. So when people know that in the morning, they're not going to have to drive 25 minutes out of the way and be late for work. They're going to be able to get on and off the freeway quickly, and then their child's going to be in a quality Montessori program for the day. We make it easier for them to get in and out of the school. We operate a car line in the morning. We have touchscreen check in and check out for our children. So they can be checked in quickly, and we know exactly who's dropping them off. You need to figure out what is your differentiator for you and your community. Maybe you have an incredible art teacher at your school that's offering these after-school programs for your elementary students. And I know that there's a school in Mexico. What is the name of that school? Escuela del Sol. They have a tremendous arts-based program that happens in the afternoon. What a differentiator, especially for the elementary areas for selling. So again, we can't think of Montessori as the only reason why people are choosing your school. They're choosing it for a myriad of reasons. Montessori should be number one, absolutely, right? We are a philosophically based program, but after that, what makes your school unique and different? And that's what I would focus on, Marnie, is figuring out what that is. And really, the best way of actually determining that is by polling your existing parents, right? Find the 20 people who you know, like, and trust, who are your quote unquote best families. Ask them why they chose your school. Those are going to be the things that you're going to want to really, really stress in your marketing efforts to encourage people to apply.
Great. That's a great answer, Matt. Thank you. Something to consider for sure. Marty says they've listed what you just suggested, so I think we're probably doing well. Yeah, absolutely.
Good to hear.
So Matt, what do you, aside from what you talked about earlier at the beginning, what's kind of a theme in your life right now as a head of school?
We have one more question from, I'm going to butcher this name. Is it Perviz? She asked, is it possible to access this webinar after hours as a recorded version? Yes, it is. So you can access all of our webinars at nidomarketing.com. You have to be a member to do that. Free membership is available. You can watch the recorded versions, and we also post these on our YouTube channel as well. So you can watch these, all of our past webinars every week. So please do check that out.
Great. Great.
Denise?
So yeah, Matt, what's a theme going on in your life right now?
Theme going on has been travel, and I'm actually kind of getting over travel. So I went to Australia for the Montessori Australia Foundation. I'm going to Atlanta in a couple weeks to speak to the Montessori administrators of Atlanta. I'm going to be speaking at the refresher course in New Orleans in February, and then we're going to be at the AMS conference in March. Travel's difficult. I felt guilty actually being gone from the school, and I know I'm doing important work, and I know we're helping other schools, but number one is going to be obviously the school that I work at, and it should be the same for you, right? That has to be the number one priority. Deneen, that's one of the reasons why you came on, right? You've been able to pick up a lot of the work at Nido, so that I can get back to concentrating on running a school. So it's been difficult for me. That's really kind of been the biggest thing going on, is that travel and kind of creating presentations and helping people. Having an online platform, an online training platform is the reason why this is possible. When Costum and I created Nido, we knew that we both have, jobs, and this was kind of something that I've wanted to offer for a long time to the Montessori community. But that when things are accessible online, when we have the online video trainings, when we have these recorded webinars, that people can actually do 80-90% of the work without actually having to talk to me. That basically everything is documented. You can go in and learn a ton of stuff on the website at your own pace. And then for people that want to actually pay us to actually do it for them, we can do that as well. And we've got a team of people that can do that. So the only way that this has been able to work has been through an online platform. And I anticipate that the travel will actually slow down a bit over the next year, kind of allowing me to get back into a normal pace of life, I guess. I don't have children, so that helps. I don't know how people actually have a full-time job and have children. So that does help at this period of my life.
Right. Well, and you bring up, it's a scenario that all heads of schools face, right? There's so many things that you want to do, and you're one person and you're human. So do you have like a strategy or a formula, I guess, for lack of a better term, on determining, what your priorities are and how to gauge that and balance it to make sure that, everything is in order?
I think I mentioned this when we were talking earlier. I'm really lucky to be able to work with experienced people, so that I don't have to worry about day-to-day things that are going on in the classroom. I don't work on anything pedagogically. I have people that I trust as Montessorians who can implement that. It's never perfect. There's always things that come up in the school, but I start to really measure my effectiveness through metrics. So like, what are the numbers? What are the metrics that I care about? And you can really measure just about anything. You can measure the number of leads that you're getting through your online advertising. You can measure the number of applications that you're receiving. You can measure how many of your kindergartners are staying for the third year of primary. You can measure how long your teachers are staying on average as guides. You can measure how long your assistants are staying on average when they're working. That has worked really, really well for me to be able to see, to really determine the numbers that I care about. And then if something's going wrong, I can put some effort and energy into fixing that, or trying to come up with a new system to improve. But that's the only way to do it, because other than that, if I was involved in everything and I was running around and trying to figure it out without having some kind of hard data, I would be operating on emotion all the time, and I wouldn't be effective at all. This isn't to say that I think I have it figured out, or I think that I'm not emotional when I operate, because of course I am. But it's made it much more easy and realistic for me to operate in the way in which we do at the size that we are.
And streamlined, right? Like, so now you've got the data that you need to move forward and strategize more effectively.
Correct.
Right. Great. Melissa has a question. Oh, she is celebrating 50 years. Congrats, Melissa. Matt, I know you guys celebrated 40 years a few years back, so you can probably speak to this. She's wondering how to celebrate this with parents in the community and if you have any ideas.
I do. First of all, Melissa, congratulations on 50 years. That's it's a big accomplishment. As Janine mentioned, we opened at 75, so we had 40 years a couple years ago, and I'm already kind of thinking about what we're going to do for our 50th. The very first thing that I would do is, if you have a budget for it, I would hire a local PR person. I would take, you could probably spend between $2,000 and $3,000 for a local PR person that has relationships with local media, and I would blast the heck out of it to your community. That is a unique story. A Montessori school celebrating 50 years is unique, and I have been through this before where I've tried to do a lot of PR myself, and it just takes too much time. I don't have the contacts. I'm not good at it. It's not something that I have a background in. And you should be able to get a lot of free coverage, especially on local television for something like that. We were able to get on the front page of the Sacramento Bee. This was 10 years ago. Sacramento Bee is the only paper in town. And this was kind of back when newspapers still did printed versions. I remember it's a big deal. We were on the front page of it because we were hosting a contingent of Montessori teachers from China. And there was an article. This is kind of when China was coming on. It's like, oh, China's going to be a big deal in the next century. So they did a whole article on our school and the fact that we had these Chinese teachers visiting and interning at our school. I did that because I was able to. We had a parent in our school who was a PR professional, and she was able to pitch that and sell that to the Bee. And for the next 5 years, I got people that referenced the fact that they saw us on the front page of the Sacramento Bee. So if you have the budget for it, I would absolutely use some of that for PR. What else would I do for a 50th anniversary?
Would you recommend maybe having a couple parents as a committee working on some ideas? What do you think about that?
I think committees are a great way to not get anything done. That's my experience. It could be much different I think you always need somebody spearheading and driving it. So when I hear the word committee, I don't like people making decisions by committee. I like to be able to have a committee of people that are willing to volunteer time and do things. That's awesome. Like, that's great. But I wouldn't put them in charge of it. But yes, all hands on deck would be great. That would be something that I would absolutely recommend. At the very least, Melissa, I think that taking time now and really trying to connect with as many alumni as possible. 50 years is a long period of time. And so, there are people that started there 50 years ago at 3 that are now in their 50s, which is crazy. And really that's a huge selling point when people are looking at choosing your school, that you have this history. And the more you can document that, the better. We've done a lot of alumni profiles for our school over the past couple years. They've been effective. That's more content that you can send out actually to your potential parents and your existing parents to increase retention. So I would definitely put time and effort into reaching out and doing interviews. If you go on our website on bergamoschools.com and you click on the alumni page, we just had a very simple email questionnaire that we sent out to our alumni, and we just asked them for a picture. And we have kind of a before, a picture when they were in the school, and then a picture of what they're looking like now. And we just ask them the same questions every time. And I think we have maybe 10 different alumni profiles on our site. That's been really, really effective. And with 50 years coming up, that would be something that I would strongly recommend that you do. You probably already have alumni profiles, I would assume, Melissa, if your school's 50 years old. But that's something that it's another reason to actually. I've experienced this where where you try to contact alumni and it's like they're so busy. The last thing they want to do is unless they have a close relationship with your school still, is to spend the time to do it. But it's a good reason. It's a good, for lack of a better word, excuse to contact them, and it gives them a kind of a reason to help you out. Hey, we're celebrating our 50th anniversary, and we'd really like to be able to profile some more people. Would you be willing to help us out? That's a lot easier sell than, hey, how are you doing? Can you give me an alumni update? I mean, it's a reason of contacting them that I think helps a lot and would get better results for you. Denise, do you have any other ideas for 50 years? You're actually pretty good at things like that.
The alumni thing is a really great idea. I wonder, are there any businesses around that are sharing a similar anniversary that might share in celebrating it? And you could look into that as well, because I imagine you've made a pretty big impact in your community after 50 years. So that could be something to look into.
Yeah, one thing too, Melissa, I would absolutely rebrand your website. And this doesn't mean redesign your website, but I would rebrand your logo, and I would splash 50 years absolutely everywhere I could, on your printed material, on your website, on everything, on your email signature. That's an asset, right? That this is a bragging right that you have, and you should put in as many places as you can. And to spend a couple $100 to have your logo redesigned, which with a caption that says "Celebrating 50 Years." Again, another great use of money, because that will it's almost like having a seal of approval, right, on all your marketing assets, where you have this. These people don't stay in business for 50 years without doing good work. So we had a suggestion. How about a 50-year book of pictures, stories, etc., basically showing the timeline of the school? Great idea, Kelly. And I would even take it a step further. I would perhaps commission. I would find a local filmmaker. You can find a lot of college students who have a degree in film and spend $500 to make a 4-minute history video of the school celebrating 50 years. That would be something, rather than a book. If it's a video, it's another online, it's another digital asset that you can use in emails, you can use on your website, and that will be spread much easier than the book. Although I like the idea of the book too, for people in your community as well. By the way, Costco does great hardbound photo books that you could do something like that with, and they're very, very inexpensive. I think you can get them for $12, $13 each, in full color with a hardcover. That could be something that you could do as well to celebrate the 50th anniversary. So check that out, and check out the video as well. That would be something that I would recommend.
Or if you have an elementary program, lower or upper, you could employ them to do it as well. Make a really neat, maybe even a quilt, a timeline of, and have that hanging up in your school.
Absolutely. I like that idea a lot.
Well, we haven't stumped you yet, Matt. I was hoping somebody would stump
you. Yeah, even if you can, I'll just make something up. And
yeah, that's true. And you do it so well.
I'm good at talking that way. That's the thing about marketing that you really have to accept, is that it's not like math. It's not like engineering, where it's like, it's an equation. It's a lot of guessing and measuring and evaluating and trying again. And so even if something doesn't work, at the very least, you're putting energy into moving forward, and you're figuring out what does work. 90% of the things that we're talking about are going to work for the schools across the country. There's still going to be those things that happen in communities. Like, for instance, I use digital billboards a lot, and we have 2 different digital billboards, and we spend $4,000 a month for these billboards. They've been very effective for us. That may not be a reality for some other schools in different areas, depending on the size of the city that you're in, where your school is located, all these other things. So definitely just try things, right? Try it and see if it works. The most important thing is that you're able to measure the effectiveness of it, and then the things that work, you do more of it, and the things that don't, you stop.
Right. Absolutely. Well, if we don't have any more questions, I mean, how are you feeling, Matt? Do you want to chat a little bit about your favorite topic, or how you feeling?
I don't have a favorite topic. I think we got some good questions today. I think that maybe in the future, when we do these, we could maybe query the community in advance for other questions as well. I've seen that some people have dropped off, and I understand that. I don't want to sit here and waste my time or your time. So if we don't have any other questions, I say we call it. We've been on for about 45 minutes at this point. And then what are we talking about next week? Do you know?
Yeah, Google Analytics, which will be a really, really good one. I know Kasim will be excited about that one. That's kind of your jam too. So next week's going to be a good one.
Awesome. Yeah, Kasim will be back next week. I know he's already put the presentation together, and this is an essential thing that at the very least you need to be able to measure the basic things about who's coming to your website, where they're coming from, how long they're spending. And we'll be talking about all that next week, so you can set that up for your school's website.
Right. Well, Matt, thank you for your time. And thanks everyone for joining us and asking really great questions. We're going to try to do this at least once a month, just to kind of give you guys an opportunity to bring up some stuff that you're experiencing, some ideas, some thoughts. And so we can be more effective too on helping all of you out.
Awesome.
So thanks again, Matt. We'll see you next week. Okay.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.